Okay, so good morning to everyone. Good morning to be here, and thanks, of course, for the invitation. So, before starting to show you the project today, I would like just to introduce a little bit our practice that is based in Brunico, in a city in Alto Adige, real close to the border of Austria. And in our office, we have architects from all Europe. It is impossible, and this is possible to see in our project because we have different kind of interpreting architecture. And for us it's important because our is a very diverse territory. We often build in a different context, one from each other. And for this reason, for us, the context and the material have to be the main media that tell the story about our works. And to show our philosophy and our idea, we decide to show to you today the Servicegebäude building in the Kreuzbergpass in the municipality of Sesto. And so how this project born? Some years ago, according with the municipality of Sexton, we decided to build important buildings in important point of the UNESCO World Heritage Area. And one of these important points was in fact the Kreuzbergpass. This path is really important because it's stepped in history. The Roman, in fact, built the first road here. And the present one showed to the visitor a spectacular view to the mountain heritage. Like I said at the beginning, our project most of the time are located in a different context from the normal one. So you can see that this Servicegebäude is really in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing around it. The other three main characters of the context are just the mountains, the rocks, and the trees, nothing else. So we really want to create something that is really simple, but can be deeply connected with these characters. So in this case, thanks to each shape, the buildings try to provide and try to create a communication with this surrounding mountain formation. And like you can see, this deep and high roof can remind you a peak of a mountains. In reality, for us was also important because with this high roof is really possible to see this building from distance and becoming an important landmark and point of orientation for the tourist. We also add this flat and low roof because in this way, when you approach the building, the volume seems to reduce itself. And of course, at the same time, this element emphasizes the function of protection, shelter, and invitation to enter that the building has to have. We also decide to maintain a really simple and clear plans. So the two main characteristics are just these two big passages. The big one brings to you inside the exhibition space where you can find a restaurant and an info point. And the other one brings the tourist inside the service space. But the most interesting drawing that I can show to you today to understand our basic idea is the section. Because here is clear that we want to make an archaical, clear, and a really simple form, where the roof is the dominant part and is really visible from distance, like I said. But also we decide to use two different kind of material, the concrete to make the roof and the large wood to make the basement or the lower part. Because our idea is that at the end, when you are inside, seems that this massive or gigantic roof is floating over your head. So this is the section in real life. You can see how these two materials were and are combined together, and how we also decide to add these triangular little details that in reality are the windows that brings this colored and filtered light inside the exhibition space. So internally, the external form of this building is maintained. So the building shows to you in its entirety and height. And we like the idea that seems that you are metaphorically entering in an interior of a mountain peak. So the outer core, like I said, is made in this white concrete from a dolomite rocks. Is an isolated concrete, so it doesn't need a straight or a layer of insulation. It's just a massive block of concrete. And the lower part is made of a hand-cut large wood, which is used for the partition walls and for the doors. And here arrive for us the most important part of our work or our philosophy. We think that choosing the right material is the way to connect the building with the context. So we spend weeks to try to figure out how these materials can be combined together. We try several color, several texture about every kind of material. And so is, for example, after all the image and the context that we saw, is maybe clear why we use this kind of white concrete and large wood like the two main materials. We also want to choose another different material to make the details. And in this case, we use this ambered color or glass element with this texture that seems like a broke, is not a flat surface. And why? Because we think that if you have to use a details, it's better that have to remind you something that you can see all around. So if you can see these details in reality, these details can remind you a precious stone that is set in the rock, like the same that you can find in the mountains. But it's interesting to see that if you combine the same element with another material, can remind you something else. So in this case, seems like the resin that is coming out from a trees. But if you use a details, just a details, is, I think, not enough. We think that, like architects, sometimes we can work like an illusionist. So maybe the details can have some other function that you cannot clearly understand when the first time you approach it. So these details, in reality, we use it like also the door handles to open the main opening or the main doors. So to arrive at the conclusion of my speech, I think that through the combination of the natural materials and the craftsmanship that we saw until now, I think that the building, or our goal was that the building at the end provide a feeling of security and value, even in this really harsh, isolated and cold place. So, thank you so much.